Hi ladies and gents, another FREEZE64 issue to share with you. This time round is issue number 41, which was released in November 2020. 404 copies have already gone out the door for our subscribers and VIPs, and it should be on general sale soon. So here's the issue itself. We got Elvira on the front cover. Game was released back in 1990 and was programmed by our interviewee for this issue, who's Ian Davison. But we also speak to the graphic designer of the game, or the graphics artist of the game, Mark Sample. So let's have a look at the issue itself. So as always, we have the contents page. There's a picture there of Ian Davison. And then we have our found page, which introduces and welcomes you to the new issue. And then we start chatting about and have a retrospective look at Elvira, the arcade game, which was released in 1991. And it was published by Flare Software. So Ian Davison, the guy who I interviewed for this issue, produced quite a few games for the Commodore 64 and originally worked for... Who did he work for? I can't remember now. Who was the other company he worked for? He worked for Tynesoft. That's it. So Ian worked for Tynesoft. Momentarily forgot there, and produced quite a few games there. But I'm focusing on Elvira, which he produced back in 1991. Now the game wasn't particularly or overly popular. I wasn't a big fan of it when I first played it, but I've grown to like the game, and I played it recently, specifically to work out which game I wanted to put on the cover. So I went through a few of Ian's games, and I played Elvira, and I thought, actually, I quite like this. It kind of looks and feels like a mixture of Turrican and another game. I can't remember what the other game was, but it's kind of, you kind of get a feel of that. But then as you start to play through the game, you realise actually it's a bit of a different game than what I expected. So there's a retrospective look, playing the game, some game screens, and then my final thoughts on the game itself. So that's Elvira. Then we have the Mouldy Cupboard, and we look at a game called Bogeymen, which was produced by Solar Software back in 1984. It's a Jim Bagley game. And now this guy, Jim, produced a few games, but seemed to use the same game engine. So as I was playing this, and I don't remember playing this game at all, and I must have played it at some point because I own the game, but Jim seemed to use the same game engine for his game Busy Bees, which was also a Solar Software game, and Bogeymen, and they literally look identical, even down to the title screen, but they play differently. It's a bit of a different twist to the game itself. It's a fun game, and I've kept it out of the Mouldy Cupboard because I want to have another play. But if you do get the chance, have a play. It is fun. It's challenging. Then we have our final part to our Diary of a Game, The Making of Badlands, with the great Steve Collins. And Steve has just been so generous over the last few months, quite a few months actually, providing all the text from his diaries. And those are the actual diaries that he wrote back in 1990. It's those old exercise books, what are they called? Silverline, well, something like that. Exercise books. So that's the final diary entries to the point when the game was actually released. And then we have a nice little retrospective look at the reviews that appeared for Badlands, and there's a screenshot which you can actually read of a scan, of what's that, Commodore format? Or was it Commodore User Magazine? I can't remember now. Julian Rignall, our lovely Julian's back, and Zap's back to March 1987, issue 23 of Zap 64. Now, even though there were quite a few games mentioned in that actual issue 23, such as what do we got? Chameleon, Labyrinth, Nosferatu the Vampire, all high-scoring games. It's only one game that actually received the Sizzler, and that was Mutants by Ocean Software. So we have a look at Mutants, or Julian has a look through, tells us what he thought back then, and then plays the game again and tells us what he thinks about the game today. So interesting views there from Julian. Then we have our Secret Squirrel, revealing hidden secrets in games, secrets such as messages and hidden graphics. And here's a game called Project X, which was released by Alternative Software in 1988, and it was on one of their triple decker packs. So it wasn't it's not a particularly well-known game, but the game was out there. It was published, and there's quite a lot of hidden messages, extra bits hidden within the game code and within the game itself. So we kind of reveal those. And as Secret Squirrel, I don't know how I found this. I just stumbled on something. I remember just looking at the game thinking, oh, it looks a bit quirky. I'll check the code. And I wasn't really looking for anything. It was just that I saw this weird game and had to check it out. Our interviewee for this issue is the lovely Ian Davison, who, as I said, worked for Tynesoft back in the early 80s and then for Flare in the early 90s. And he produced games such as Beverly Hills Cop, Betty's Big Bingo Money, Elvira, European Games, Summer Challenge Olympiad, Superman Man of Steel, Winter Challenge Olympiad, and Winter Sports 1992. We have a great chat. It's a really lovely interview. And Ian talks openly about producing games for Tynesoft and how Tynesoft started and how his work developed. It's really enjoyable and definitely worth a read. Then we have our hardware Horde review. So it's a review of this device here. It's a great little device, and what it is, it's a SID player. It plays SID files, so PSID files. So you literally just drop them on, and you put them on this micro SD card, plug it in, put power to it, plug your headphones in, and then you press your play button, and it starts playing SID tunes, and it's really crisp and clear and a beautiful sound, and it's really cool. It's a lovely device, and so that gets reviewed here. It also tells you where it's available, and I'm not particularly up on hardware. I really don't have a clue about hardware, to be honest with you. But so what you do is you get a real lame look, real beginner's look at the actual piece of hardware. I don't delve deep into it because I haven't got a clue about hardware. Then there's our Zeta Wing, which receives a FREEZE64 Sizzler Zeta Wing review, which is a fantastic shoot 'em up produced by Sarah Jane Avery. Now, it's a game that I didn't particularly get into until I completed the first level, and then all of a sudden I kind of got it, but I didn't get it straight away, to be honest with you. So I give it a review, and also Frank Gaskin pops up of Games That Weren't, my best buddy Frank, and he gives it a review too. And then the lovely Mark Sample chats with us about the making of the graphics to Elvira. So this is all his design work. And I originally, when it came to producing the Elvira piece, I originally only had the interview completed with Ian Davison. And I can't remember how I found Mark or where I saw Mark, but I thought, I'm sure that's Mark Sample who produced the graphics for Elvira. So I asked him, and he confirmed it. And I said, any chance of an interview so that it can go with the Elvira piece? And so, as well as the programmer, we've also chatted to the graphic designer. And not only did Mark produce the graphics for Elvira, he also started producing the graphics for Elvira 2, International Ninja Rabbit, Trolls, Winter Sports 92, which is why you'll get some of those, the Trolls little sprites. There's also the Ninja Rabbit sprite at the top there. And it's a lovely interview because Mark talks about how he produced graphics and what tools he used. It's more of an in-depth into the process, which is what I like. Then we have some cheats there. So all of you that don't subscribe or don't purchase FREEZE64, you can steal all my pokes there if you want. Help yourself. So it's all cheats for Zeta Wing. So we've got infinite lives, weapon change, collision off, faster movement, level selector, and jump to the game ending. And then finally we have my Commodore 64 Heaven featuring Jason Oakley, who's based out in Australia. Now Jason and I have been working together for the last 3 or 4 weeks because Jason has produced a game called Toxic Frenzy, which has got a bit of a FREEZE64 twist to it, and that's going to be released on Christmas Eve 2020. So if you are a subscriber to FREEZE64, issue 42 onwards, and you're also signed up to our exclusive subscriber MailChimp email service, then you will receive the game along with another free game that hasn't been released called Trooper, and you'll receive that on Christmas Eve. I'll be sending those out 6 a.m. on Christmas Eve. So anyway, for now, just to quickly mention, probably the best podcast on, the best podcast on the net, the Ted Dabney Experience podcast, which is a fantastic podcast. If you're into arcade games, arcade cabinets, and you want to know the history, these guys do the most amazing interviews with the top guys that produced all those wonderful cabinets back in the day. And the project's by Richard May, who's a subscriber to FREEZE64, Paul Drury, who's a good friend of mine and also a subscriber to FREEZE64, and Tony Temple, who needs to be a subscriber to FREEZE64. Tony, time to get a subscription, mate. Anyway, that's issue number 41, November 2020 issue of FREEZE64.